Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to share a quick card using this Thank You Blooms Betterpress registration set. Now, this is the first video I have showing on my channel with the Betterpress registration. I did film another one. It's not going to show till next week. And for that one, I have lots of tips and tricks for using these. It's using the new Betterpress registration line. This one I had on order, but I didn't get it until after that one was filmed. So I'm going to create a quick thank you card with this. I'm using my Betterpress system as well as the Flower Garden ink set from Spellbinders. I have found when filming the previous video that using smaller pads with these works a lot easier and a lot better. You can use bigger ones, but if you get any on this registration sheet that comes with it, you'll want to wipe it off because it was much easier to transfer ink from the sheet to my paper than if it had gone on the back of the Betterpress. So every Betterpress registration set comes with one of these registration templates. I like to tape it in place to make sure it doesn't shift in any way while I'm creating with it. You probably don't necessarily need to do this step. I just felt more comfortable doing this. So on this registration, it has your different plates outlined with different colors. So it shows you exactly which ones are intended to use or be used with the same color. So you can go against that. You don't necessarily have to use all with the same color, but I went with what was intended for this set. So I'm using two different pinks for the flowers here, and the green, I'm actually not going to use the green from the Flower Garden ink set. I'm using a peeled pink archival green. It's in the same shape of pad as the Betterpress inks, and it is an archival ink, so it will work perfectly. I just like the shade of green a little bit better for greenery. So once I have those plates that are on there inked, I can put my clear plate to the base and then run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine, and you can see we get a partial image from those flowers in perfect placement with the color that I chose. So now I'm going to put this second set of flowers on here, and for this one I'm going to use the lighter shade of pink from that same set. One of them is called Strawberry and the other one is Azalea. I don't remember which one is the darker, which one is the lighter. I think the Strawberry is the darker and the Azalea is the lighter. But once again, I'm going to ink those plates, put the clear plate to the base, and then run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine. So by doing this, you can create quite a few cards in a short amount of time. If I was going to create a bunch of different cards, I wouldn't be cleaning my plates off in between each and every card. I would probably be doing similar colors. But it was really quick and easy to change up the plates on here and to run it through my machine for the pressure. The one thing that I learned the first time when filming, if you're using bigger plates or bigger ink pads, it's really easy to get that ink on the clear, which I mentioned before. And in order to avoid any ink transferring, I like to take a clean cloth and just wipe it off quickly before putting that clear plate on the base. That way I can get a nice crisp ink transfer without getting any ink where I don't want it to be. And it's really easy to see where that ink is on the clear sheet. So I always have a soft cloth ready to go, just waiting for that. For my thank you, I decided I wanted to use some embossing. I thought it would be a great way to add just a different ink color as well as a different texture and add a little bit of metallic to it. So I'm using a Versamark pad and I'm using some superfine gold embossing powder. You can use whatever color embossing powder you want for this. It doesn't need to be a certain color, but it's a great way just to add, like I said, a bit of a different texture. I have an embossing powder tool here that I'm running over my image. The archival ink dries fairly quickly, so that embossing powder might not stick to that ink, but I want to make sure that it's really nice and dry. So by putting that ink powder tool over the whole thing, I can make sure that my embossing powder only sticks to the parts of the thank you words and not the rest of my card. Now, I did find as well when using bigger pads, especially my Versamark pad, because it's sticky, it tends to shift that plate a little bit. I find with using that clear registration sheet that the plates are not as, the magnet is not as strong and it's much easier to move that plate. So Once I have that piece inked up, all I did was take my die pick and I just used it to gently move the plate back in place where it's supposed to go. It's very easy to line up those plates where they're supposed to go. The outline is very easy to see, and it works perfectly with the outline of each press plate. So with that Versamark on there, I put the gold embossing powder on there. One thing that you want to do, if you have gold embossing powder sticking anywhere that you don't want it to go, take a soft brush and just brush that off. You definitely want to be doing this before you melt any powder. If it's on there when you start melting the powder, it's going to melt where it is, and you can't get embossed powder off of, or melted powder off of your piece. So you definitely want to do that carefully before you use your embossing tool to melt that powder. Once I have that exactly how I want it to go, I take my embossing tool and I melt that powder where it is. If you've never done embossing before, it's almost like magic. It goes from being a dark granular color to a smooth, shiny gold. And I absolutely love the different texture it gives to this image. This is such a pretty image to begin with, but by adding a different texture to part of it, it just gives it a little bit more interest and makes it a little bit less flat. Sometimes when you're doing exactly the same technique, even if it's in different colors, sometimes it can give off a little bit of a flat look because you don't have any different textures, even if it's just visual texture. So there is the finished image. The one thing that I'm going to do before assembling it to my card is I'm going to trim it down so that I can put a piece of gold cardstock behind it. So I'm taking a 1/4 inch off of each side, and I want that gold cardstock to tie in with the embossed gold on the front. If you don't happen to have gold cardstock, what you can do is use a piece of cardstock that's a little bit bigger than the piece that you're using for your image piece. You can press down your Versamark pad around the edges and then put some gold embossing powder on there and melt that. And then you get the look of some gold metallic paper that you can put behind your image piece, and it's going to match exactly. So just a little trick if you don't happen to have any gold cardstock, or if you're running low, or if the gold cardstock that you have doesn't match your embossing, if it's a different color tone. Great way to get that gold without having the cardstock. So the last step that I'm doing is I'm taking some gliss and stickles and I'm just putting little dots in the centers of the flowers. This particular one has some gold tones to it, but it's still a transparent stickle, so it's not going to add a ton of color. It is going to add a little bit of sparkle and a little bit of a different texture. I only put it to the center of the flowers, and I like to put it in dots so that it gives that texture as well. The thing with putting it in dots is it's going to take a lot less time for it to dry than, say, putting a large, smoothly covered area. While I'm waiting for those stickles to dry, I'm just going to clean off my plates. I like to use some Arranger Archival ink cleaner, and I just put it on those plates and then take a different soft cloth and wipe them off just to make sure that a lot of that ink is off of there. They tend to stain a little bit, but I don't mind stained plates if that means that they got used. So with that done, I can put those back in the package, ready to be used the next time. And I know that I don't have any ink residue left on those plates. So when I go to use inks next time, it's not going to affect it. So here is our finished card, and it came together so quickly. Like I said, this would be a great one to do a bunch of different thank you cards, but it still has a lot more interest than just stamping in one color or doing a singular image. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Have a fantastic day.